Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here, and I am very excited today to be joined by two very special guests, and that is Mr. Anders and Davin Lindwall. They are the director and the producer of the exciting new film Green and Gold, which releases through Fathom Events on January 31st. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for taking the time out of this busy stretch for you and this chatting about this new film.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah,
Thanks so
thanks for
much
having
for
us,
having us.
man.
Yeah, and let me say first off, just congratulations. I've had the chance already to preview this film. I have seen it, and it's a great film. I think this is a film that is going to resonate with a lot of people. I think it's a very moving film that I hope people will check out. But before we kind of get into just the film itself, I know this is a movie that is very much like fundamentally about family, but obviously it's also a movie that is made by family. You guys are brothers, and I know it's been a journey for you guys. So why don't we just start there? Sort of how did two brothers from the Midwest end up making, a movie like this, releasing kind of, wide release through theaters? And maybe what was that process like to do so as brothers?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been a sheer miracle is what I would say. It's the coolest thing we've ever been able to be a part of um and yeah, I think, being able to share it with your brother and is something that's really special. I mean, we've always been pretty close. Me and Davin, we're 6 years apart, but um, I think being able to tell a story that our grandfather was a dairy farmer, so farming is in the back of our family heritage and history, and being able to do that with, my brother has been so special. And it's not just it's him, it's our folks were driving down on the weekends with bringing trucks and transporting things around. Our sister was she organized the church choir that sings and in the film, and so it has been a real full family affair at this point.
Yeah, well, there's enough, I think, an authenticity to this film that as someone that reviews, a lot of films, is just not often found, I think, in Hollywood. And I believe there was much of this film, I think, filmed on location and even in like, collaboration with local communities. How important was it for you guys to just really like capture the spirits and the experiences of these people in a very, authentic and honest way?
Yeah, that was everything for us, to be honest, to keep this story authentic and true. Just because it's our home too. Like we're telling a story for people that we're super fond of and grew up with in a culture that we cherish. So that was non-negotiable for us, was like, hey, this thing has to be super authentic, or else we're not going to do it. And a funny story to piggyback off of that is we 2 weeks before actual main production, a studio reached out to us and wanted to buy the film and say, "Hey, we really love this story, love what you guys are doing, but we actually want to pivot and shoot it down in a different state that had tax incentives." And which is smart, right? Like that's a very smart business move with a film to make. And uh, we had to respectfully pass just because. We're like, we have to tell this thing in Wisconsin. This is the birth of it. This is where it has to be. So for us in our minds, that's where the story always was. But
Yeah, and it
Something
definitely
else.
comes through. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was just to piggyback off that. I think I remember Craig T. Nelson when he was filming with us too. He's rolling around in a cattle stall in 30-degree weather in Wisconsin, and he's like, Anders, this is so fun. He's like, I can't tell you, he's like, I'm shooting on studio sets all the time, but to be in this environment with farmers around, with livestock, he's like, it's just so real, all of it. And I think that was such a huge compliment for me. I was like, okay, we're doing something right if Craig T. Nelson is giving it the thumbs up. So
Yeah, and he's fantastic in this movie. But yeah, that definitely comes through. This is a movie to me that feels like, obviously you have a great cast, but it feels like real people, real lives, just real experiences. Speaking of Craig T. Nelson, his character has a fantastic quote at some point in this movie. Speaking of another character, where he says, "He's not an artist. He moves too fast to experience anything." And I think this movie really seems to embody just that mentality. I think both like in the story, but also I think just in the way kind of behind the scenes, the way this film was put together. And I read somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you actually began like, as a production crew, that you would begin each, day of filming with just 60 seconds, a minute just of silence. And that fascinates me. Like, can you maybe share a little bit, like what was the inspiration, and significance for that?
Wow, that's so cool that you've done your homework, man. This is that's really special. One, that quote is our other producer, Aaron. That's his favorite line in the whole movie is he's an artist, but he's no artist. He moves too fast to experience anything. And I think for us, the culture that we live in, I think the world that we live in is so it feels so out of control often. And for us, the representation of farmers is this slow, steady, simple existence that reminds you of the beauty that's right in front of you the whole time. And so when we were thinking about filming um, with production, it's especially crazy, right? You're literally burning dollars as you're waiting around for anything. But we thought it would be important from just like a spiritual component of just grounding everybody. So, folks from there were from different spiritual backgrounds, but we thought, if we can start the day with a moment of peace, and so we would just be sitting out in these, out in the fields with cows roaming around us, and um, and just taking a breath for 60 seconds as a crew was so dynamic. And one of our crew members actually at his wedding implemented that. He had their wedding ceremony start with 60 seconds of just silence together. So it caught on and was a really pivotal part, I think, or one of the most memorable parts of, I think, the production. So
Yeah, I love that about even just I love what you guys did with the end credits of this movie. I think so perfectly just encapsulates sort of that, just, hey, take a breath, just enjoy, the beauty of God's creation. This isn't necessarily, I think, like an overly sentimental or like sugar-coated film by any means, but it is a story I think that is deeply infused with just a sense of optimism. I think it's, the goodness of the human spirit, just very regular people. You kind of already touched on it a little bit, but why do you guys think that stories like this, about very ordinary, kind of unsung heroes, why do you think stories like that are important just to spotlight today?
You want to go, Anders?
yeah, I think in general, like the world feels like it's easy to celebrate charismatic people, right? It's easy to celebrate people who are making a big splash, people who are, writing big books, doing big things. And I remember one time as a kid I wanted to go meet up with one of my favorite authors. And my mom was like, why? And I was like, oh, he just thinks so brilliant, and she's like, you have so many brilliant people who think and live right around you, and you don't reach out to them just to spend time with them and hear what they have to say. And that made a real big impact on me, where I think a lot of the fabric of our society is held together by these people who are just kind of quietly, picking somebody up, bringing them to that location, volunteering after school programs. In this case, farmers. It's like there's these people who are doing things that are never seen, but I think are really the backbone of society, and what I want really my kids to emulate, what I want them to see as heroes, because um, yeah, because there's a simplicity in it, and there's just such a genuineness towards living. There's such an awareness and a presence towards your neighbor that has a way higher value to me than someone who's making a big splash doing something spectacular. So
And that was the community, just to piggyback, that was the community we grew up in. And, that's why it was such a passion for us, was like, how do we tell a story that's also sophisticated, right? Because a story like this can very easily get turned into something that's, I don't want to like knock any other films, but just, we didn't want it to be cheesy in any sort of way. We want it to be very true and authentic, but also tell a good story about these types of people, and that we saw a gap in cinema in that way. So that was a big hope of ours with this story.
Yeah, and I think you guys definitely pulled it up. This isn't a cheesy movie. This is a very honest, the good and the bad of just ordinary people. You mentioned earlier, this alluded to just, your own faith. I know you're both people of faith. This is not to me at all like a heavy-handed, preachy type of movie, but like I think faith does play a very central role, maybe understated all throughout of this film. Maybe for both of you guys, like how did your own faith influence the way that you approach telling this story?
yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, all matters of our faith and spiritual life are so sometimes difficult to articulate. And but some of the people whose faith and that I've respected the most, they often sometimes say the least about it. They just kind of live in it, and it just comes out in the fruit of their life. And I think we wanted to make a film that was approachable for people who come from all different backgrounds, and but still could, from our life, like the Christian upbringing, the Christian faith, like they could look at it and understand the beauty of it that we grew up with and understood and could appreciate it without, we didn't want to make a movie that's preachy or pushy in any kind of way, but also reflect the depth of how that um, how that comes out in people's lives, both in, a farmer or in community members and that kind of thing. So, um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's maybe the best I can do. It's a tough question to articulate for us, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, were you gonna say
Oh,
something?
I was just gonna say, and like Andrews is saying, it's a difficult thing to write, right? Because, um, yeah, you don't want to put as soon as you start to try to articulate it, and then someone else, like an actor, is trying to act that out. That's when it has a tendency to just feel a little bit off or a little bit unapproachable or something like that. So we were very cautious of that, and even the original script development and in the edit process, like, hey, we want this thing like it's got to be totally natural and authentic. Otherwise, it's just going to come across to the general audience as not there. So
Yeah, and even people that are, followers of our ministry and channel know that I can be critical of, even as someone that is myself a Christian, uh, I can be critical of films that do feel like it's preaching rather than telling. And this film never does that to me. The faith
Mm,
is very much integral to the characters
mm,
themselves. Kind of a follow up just on the kind of the faith element. I think in a lot of movies that do deal with aspects of faith or religion, usually those components are almost restricted exclusively to like evangelistic or kind of like a missional context. But your film, kind of in contrast to that, really explores just the almost like sacred experience of just working on the land, kind of the experience of just being connected to the earth. I think there's one character in the film that actually says, there's a holiness to the way that you guys work
mm.
the land. Can you maybe share a little bit about maybe just that and why you guys like that was a important theme for you guys to explore?
Yeah. No, it's interesting because, for us when we grew up, um, particularly in Christian communities, stewardship was always talked about with like you steward your family, your finances, your time. But when it came to the natural world, that was for the hippies. And I think, which was funny because for me, most of my close connections that I had with God and encounters with God came through the natural world. It came through experiences I had sitting by a lake or amongst animals and that kind of way of life. And so I think for us, that was like a really important part to talk about was, um, a farmer who just has this really close connection and is obviously experiencing God in the work that he's doing. He struggles sometimes with humans, but I think, yeah, that the essence of stewardship, and that seems to be more and more a thing that we have to consider is how does the way that we live, how does the food that we eat, how does the land that is being worked, how do we maintain that for and steward that for future generations well beyond ourselves and leave it in a more a beautiful way. So, um, yeah, I think does that kind of answer your question,
Yeah,
Joe?
and yeah, and it's refreshing too. It's a thing that you don't see explored a whole lot through films, that deal with faith. I have one final question, but before I get there, I won't ask you guys to bet the farm on it, but I feel like it would be malpractice for me not to, given the time of year, to at least get your quick Super Bowl prediction.
Oh man.
I'm
I'd
curious
like
what
to
you
see the Bills. I'd like to see the Bills do it. I
yeah.
just got a soft spot for them. I've always liked like Doug Flutie back in the day, and they were also always like going against the Cowboys and losing like us. So
Yeah, the Bills are nasty tough. I like the Bills. I think I predicted Bills and Lions in the Super Bowl, so I think it'll be one of those two for sure. As much as I don't want to bet on the Lions, but yeah, they're a juggernaut this year. So
Hey, well, I'm a Bills fan, so I endorse, I
Yep.
approve that. prediction for you guys. This is sort of a last question for you. Obviously, you guys, I'm sure, are hoping people go buy tickets and go see this movie, and I'm sure you'd like for critics to give you good, nice, good reviews. But kind of beyond all that, just sort of standard movie stuff. Um, what is sort of the thing that you hope audiences that do go see this film, like, what do you hope most that they will take away with them from that experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many things, I think I guess I'm never like a firm believer that movies have the ability to like really change people's lives. Like I think they have the ability to inspire and cast vision and maybe that then ultimately can change lives and that kind of thing. So I hope if there is I hope there's some kind of waft of inspiration that hits them and like when they're kind of in this room of people, ideally in a theatrical environment and reminded of just, despite life's being really difficult and hard, there's such an abundant source of goodness and joy that is also in the pot as well. And um, that good things happen and that the stories, it's always hard to tell when the story's over, and and so that's maybe what I hope for.
Yeah, I would just say to piggyback that we're so fond of this area that we grew up in and did such a we're so intentional about keeping it authentic to northern Wisconsin and not that the film should play well for everybody and we won audience choice in Austin Film Festival, which was awesome. So it proves like it can stretch beyond that, but uh, I hope it brings just a cool awareness to this part of the world that people can watch it and be like, whoa, that's a pretty unique area and some pretty good people. And yeah, just because we're big fans of it up there. So
Hey, well, you guys are great. This movie is great. Encourage everyone, go see it January 31st, releasing in theaters across America. But thanks so much, guys. I know this is going to be a big couple of weeks for you, but congratulations and all the best with the rest of this journey.
Thanks so much, Daniel.
thanks,
Appreciate it.
Daniel.
Appreciate you having us on.